Okay, I wanted to shoot a follow-up video for my Arcade1Up mod control deck. And the reason for that is because I misspoke in my other video, and I wanted to give a little bit more detail on how to actually measure for the buttons. There was some question on that, so I just wanted to be a little bit clearer. So first and foremost, in my previous video, I had commented on the fact that these were the stock buttons, the lower ones. That's incorrect. What was throwing me off was the jump and attack buttons, or the jump and attack label here next to the buttons. That was throwing me off. I was thinking those were the stock buttons. They're not. Those labels were actually below the stock buttons. So the stock buttons were up here for Leonardo. For Michelangelo, they were up here. For Donatello, they were up here. And then for Raphael, they were up here. So any of the additional buttons I added were below those buttons. So let me kind of walk through the process of adding the additional buttons again and what I did in order to get a template for that. So I took a piece of paper, again, the control deck, when disassembled, you just have this MDF board here. So what I did was I took the piece of paper, I stuck it underneath the control deck, lining up the top and the left edge of the piece of paper with the left edge and the top of the control deck. And when the piece of paper is underneath, and again, when this is completely disassembled, you can see the factory holes here for these two buttons. So what I did was I took a pen and I drew around those circles. So essentially outlined those circles. And that gave me these two circles here. And what I did was I folded that piece of paper so that the topmost circle's top edge of the circle was right at the fold of the paper. Now what I did was I took a tape measure, just a second here, I've got a tape measure. I took a tape measure, and when the buttons aren't in there, this is much easier to do, but I measured down 5/8 of an inch from the top hole to the edge of where the next hole was going to start. So the bottom edge of the top hole down 5/8 to the top edge of where the button below that is going to start. So the distance between this, again, is 5/8. And that was just a distance that I came up with. If you want to do something more than that, feel free, but I definitely would not go any less than 5/8 of an inch. So what I did, again, measured down 5/8, I put a little mark there, and then what I did was I put the piece of paper down on there as a template, and I lined up the top of this circle with that 5/8 inch mark. And then what I did was, let me get my tape measure again here. I took the tape measure and I measured down from the top of the deck to the top of the piece of paper. And I wanted to make sure that the measurement along the top of the paper was exactly the same from one side of the piece of paper to the other. And in doing that, that ensures me that the piece of paper is straight. I can also, at least on the Leonardo and the Raphael control set, you can also line it up over here on the side, and that will also keep it straight. So again, once I had that in the correct position, I took my 1 1/8 inch spade bit, I stuck it down in the center there. As you can see, I put a hole through the paper and made sure that I mashed it down hard enough to put a mark within the MDF. And then at that point, I was able to drill it out because that mark is where the center of the bit's gonna go. And then I just drilled it out. So again, I did the same thing over here for Raphael. When this is disassembled, I put the piece of paper underneath here. Again, lining it up with the top and the right edge of the board. I stuck this paper underneath there, and I drew or traced around the outline of the circle, which gave me my template here. And then same thing, I measured down 5/8 of an inch from the top button, and that would be where the topmost circle on the template would start. And then again, I lined it up here on the edge, and then I also measured down from the top here. So let me get my tape measure again. I measured down from the top of the control deck to the top of the piece of paper. made sure the measurement was the same, and then I knew my piece of paper was straight and the template was straight. And then again, I took the spade bit, stuck it through the paper, I mashed it down in the MDF, and that gave me the starting mark for the center of the spade bit for when I drilled it out. And I'm looking at the Michelangelo one. Again, the same angle that is on Leonardo's buttons are the same angle that you're going to use here on Michelangelo. So again, these were the factory buttons, not these. So what I did, again, just measured down 5/8 of an inch, stuck the template there, and then I measured from the top of the piece of paper up to the top of the control deck on both sides, or both ends of the piece of paper, just to make sure that this was straight. Stuck the spade bit again through the paper, made the mark on the MDF. And then what I did was I actually bored these out first. And then what I did was I stuck this circle here in the hole, because then I knew where to line that up with. And then again, I measured from the top of the piece of paper up to the top of the control deck on both ends of the paper, just to make sure that the paper was straight. And I made my mark here for this button. And then I did the same thing for the top button. So this was an existing hole here. So I just stuck this circle over that hole, and again, measured from the top of the piece of paper up to the top of the control deck at each end, made sure the measurement was the same. I knew my piece of paper was straight, and then I marked it for this button as well. And then Donatello, same exact thing, just using the template for Raphael. So I hope that helps answer some questions. I hope that explains it a little bit better than what I did in my initial video there. Because again, like I said, I was looking at the jump and attack on the board here, and that was throwing me off. And I was thinking that the bottom buttons were the factory ones, when in fact, the top buttons were the factory buttons. So yeah, if you have any questions about, or any additional questions about the buttons, go ahead and post those in the comments, and I will try to answer those the best I can.